winging it.
Yes.
Y'all are coming in to like a hot conversation over here as we were just contemplating where to go 2 years from now in season 4. But if you stay tuned, you'll at least hear about season 3. We jumped right in. Welcome, Jen, to the last episode of season 2 of Unscripted with Ally and Jen. Can you believe it?
Not really. It does feel like time flies very quickly. And I know that we enjoy ourselves doing this. We enjoy hearing from other people who are paying attention to our shenanigans. Yeah. We both have the same word. Yeah.
We're coming in surround sound now, folks.
Sure are. And we have all of season 3 planned out, which is super exciting. And which we did for this we did for season 2 as well. Season 1, we were kind of just like winging it, figuring things out on the fly. But I think it worked out really well. We had a nice clear arc what we were doing this year. Next year, super exciting because we have a whole plan for that. And then now we're already thinking about season 4. So look at us. We'll thank ourselves in a year for this conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And folks, don't worry. It's not really going to lose the nature of Unscripted, even with all this planning that we're talking about that we're doing, because we never know what's going to happen in these episodes, regardless if we plan the topic and loosely where the conversation is going to head. So we will give you the sneak peek on season 3 at the end of the episode, because why would we give you all the goods up front? But if you're here with us live, we would love to know. So drop a little note to us in the comments so we can see that you were with us this morning. And if you catch the replay later on, of course, let us know what key takeaways or aha moments you have as you catch today's episode. So today we're focusing on energy, right? How to sustain your energy while working on your book.
Yes. And this is why it's unscripted, because I had the wrong banner on the bottom for the 2 minutes that we've been live so far. So yes, we are not talking
metrics. When did we do metrics?
Last month.
So
that makes sense.
So if y'all want to catch that one, just head on over to one of our YouTube pages or LinkedIn profiles. You can catch last month's episode on metrics. So that was really kind of quantitative and qualitative measurements. Today's episode with energy is really more qualitative. I don't know that we have a lot of suggestions for how to measure your energy in a quantitative sense. So today is really more tips, tricks, and strategies for keeping up the momentum as you're doing this thing of writing a book, which can feel like a very long game.
Yes. And as the show description implies, there is no actual secret. So we're over here being clickbaity, like what's the secret to sustaining my energy and working on my book, when the reality is that there is no secret. That is the crux of it. But I think that the benefit is that you have worked with many authors, as have I, and we've both published multiple books, and so we have kind of a glimpse of what works for ourselves, but then also kind of like what works for other people. So
and actually I want to start with a story, Jen, that you told me when we were behind the scenes. And then I'm going to make a metaphor out of that. So will you tell the audience about, well, actually, if you tell the audience the story, is it going to ruin Christmas morning for your child?
No, it is not. Because I have no idea what you were about to even say. I'm like, I have no idea where she's going with this. Now I know where you're going. Okay. It will not.
They won't. Okay. So tell the story of the thing that you bought and then how you needed to get it into your car and then home.
Yes. Okay. So I purchased a regulation size table tennis table for my son for Christmas, and I shipped it to the store. So before our call, I'm like, I got to get in, I got to get out, because I'm thinking, I can bring this into my house, no big deal. And it is like 200 pounds, and it's 9 feet by 5 feet. And so I had to unbox it in my car and come in and out of my house 7 separate times to bring all of the pieces in, hide them sporadically throughout my house, and then come and sit down at my desk. And I came in as we were like getting on. I was still like out of breath from that endeavor. And it took 2 grown men to put it into my car. So clearly why I thought I could take it out of the car myself is a mystery, but yes.
So then what will you have to do in order to build the table now that it's dispersed throughout your house?
I'm going to have to try to remember where I put everything. So I'm going to probably take some copious notes when we're off of this call before I move into the rest of my day.
Okay. Folks, Sustaining your energy is much like this table tennis endeavor. And here is how. At the beginning part of the journey where Jen picked up the table, it required 2 other people to help her load the car to get the table in, right? And to travel it back home. But once she got home, it took multiple trips for her to break it down into smaller pieces and carry it in manageable steps. So the point that I am trying to make here is that at different phases along your book writing journey will require different lifts, different energy, and different realities. It's not going to look the same way at the beginning of your journey as it does at the end of your journey because of a variety of factors, including the fact that you will have evolved, the book will have evolved, the draft will no longer be a blank page, it'll be something with words on it. It'll feel unruly and unwieldy at times. There will be moments when you're going to need support. There's going to be moments where you need to just bite off what you can realistically bite off. So I want you to stick the table tennis anecdote into your back pocket because I think it's quite perfect for today's conversation.
Yeah, I think so. And I think when we're thinking about sustaining energy, I just happen to be when I am committed to getting the thing done because I was like, okay, as I'm driving home, I'm like, all right, I have 30 minutes before Ally and I are getting on. Let me see how much I can do in 30 minutes. And then once I took the first heavy piece out of the car, I'm like, well, now I'm like Hercules and I need to do all of the heavy pieces right now. Versus I still have to move and hide a couple of other pieces and I still have to wrap the empty box. So it's thinking about what can you do now because you have the energy to do it now. Even if you set like I think about it as like setting realistic goals, right? Like if we think about it, like my realistic goal was like, what can I actually get done before I get on this conversation?
Yeah.
But then once I get into it, I was like, all right, I'm feeling strong because they are probably like 40 pounds each. Like, and there was 4 of them. Like it was not an easy lift getting it in and out of my house. But I had momentum going. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to finish this. But I did not have the momentum to sit and wrap this giant box because I have to do this all before he gets home from school. So, it's thinking about what do you have the energy for in the moment and changing your plan if you are like, I'm going to go in with a low goal, but all of a sudden you have energy. It's like, all right, great. You have energy. Like keep rolling with it while you have it. And then when you don't have it, do something different that requires less energy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Or just a shift in energy.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just like, it could be shifting your location. It could be shifting when you write. It could be shifting how you set yourself up for success. I mean, there's lots of shifts that can happen throughout the course of developing a manuscript.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that the energy required or motivation or focus, whatever you want to call it, changes as the manuscript develops. So let's just start here with like keeping up your energy when you're going through the first draft. So you've got blank page, you're putting the words down for the very first time. You don't have all of the words to revise. You're literally just trying to get through to first full 35,000, 45,000, whatever amount of words you're striving for based on your genre, perhaps. What are some of your things that you've either done yourself, Jen, as an author, or you've suggested to clients to sustain their energy during just first draft? Messy, shitty, vomity first draft.
Yeah, the ugly one.
The ugly one, yeah.
I think it's starting one step before and just trying to summon some self-awareness to what your working style looks like and what feels good for you. Because what I know to be true, and I write about this in Publish Your Purpose, is we can all put together a writing plan. We can put together a writing schedule that says, I'm going to write 400 words a day for the next 6 months to get to whatever my goal is. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that some personalities and some preferences do not allow for someone to just sit and get into that writing habit. It's a wonderful thing. Many, many experts say, just get into a habit of writing daily. That sounds wonderful in theory, but in practice, it doesn't work for everybody. And so I think it's kind of starting with deciding what is your kind of ultimate timeline for how long you want this to take you. And how much flexibility will you build into that timeline to allow for you to have those kind of creative spurts? Like if you'd rather sprint versus kind of like have a slow and steady pace, like building in that timeline. Because for me, like I'll have a book idea and I will just let it percolate and simmer in my head for a really long time. And then maybe I'll sit and start to kind of put together an outline, and then I just kind of let it simmer again. But when I'm like ready to write, like I am prolifically writing nonstop to try to like get it all out. And that some authors work that way. And a lot of authors do work in that slow and steady, you know, I'm going to do it once a week. I'm going to do it twice a week. I'm going to do it daily. So I think it really is trying to figure out what strategy is going to work for you, and being open to playing around to say, all right, I'm going to try weekly. That seems like it's not enough. Let me do it, you know, every other day, or start off daily and be like, this is absolutely not meant for me. And then course correct. So that way you at least have a plan that you're going toward, because then the energy and momentum can match alongside the plan that you've set for yourself.
Yeah. I love that you've talked about what's realistic. Here's what I hear a lot. In the early stages, I hear from authors like, you know how you read about the famous ones, like getting up at 5 a.m. and like writing X number of words before they do anything else? Is that how I'm supposed to do it? And I'm always like, fuck those guys. Like, seriously. Because when I ask them like who they're like referencing or whatever, it's like, I don't know, the Ernest Hemingways or something. We're talking about a totally different generation. Totally different cultural zeitgeist, totally different, like even publishing industry in terms of how those types of writers made their money or how known they were. And then you have to think about gender expectations and norms and those types of things in terms of during that time frame, right? Likely there was a lot of room for men to get up at whatever crack of dawn and write with no other responsibility yet, because they weren't maybe necessarily taking care of the children and the household and these other things. It wasn't a digital age, so there also weren't like 1,000 distractions. You know, there was a very different method of writing, right? Because they probably were doing a lot by hand or typewriter, depending on who they were, right? Quill. Yeah. A lot of writers started off with episodic writing. They were writing a piece that needed to be printed by a certain deadline because it was going to go into the next print edition of like whatever, you know? So it's not realistic to think that methods from these like classic authors from yesteryear is the way to do it for you. Now, I know that there are some current 5 a.m. writer clubs that meet, you know, online for accountability. I have recently adopted the 5 or 5:30 writing for myself because that works now in this season because I'm not sleeping as great. And I'm tired of not getting to my own writing because I'm so exhausted at the end of the day working on everybody else's. But the only time that I have for myself is to put it first, right? But a handful of years ago in 2020, when I was working on my first memoir, there was no way. I had a toddler at home. I was starting a new business. I was still working a full-time job. I was going through a separation and divorce I was beyond the divorce at that point, but like, it was still like establishing my new normal.
Yeah.
Right. 5 a.m. Hell no.
Absolutely.
I valued my sleep, you know, especially not knowing how many times my little guy woke up in the middle of the night, you know, and if we had to fight for him to go back and sleep in his own bed, you know, so that was not the way that I did that first draft. Like, you know, I did the writing sprint as many times a week as I could fit it in 15 or 20-minute increments, you know, very different than how I'm drafting now, you know, 5 years later. So I think, you know, not only is it about being realistic with how you work and what your schedule will allow and your other responsibilities in life, but it's also recognizing that what might work in one season doesn't necessarily work in another season because of how many different things change around you, like outside of like the book itself.
Yeah. And being flexible with that. Like I even noticed that I have like cyclical in terms of like every, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks or so. It's like I can almost feel my energy kind of like have this kind of like the high and the low, where I have been in since October 7th. I've been working on something that I will be releasing at some point next year, hopefully February. But I've been working nonstop on this project since October. If I had to do that in May, my energy, like it just doesn't work for me in May. So it's a matter, and that's why like right now I'm like, I need to get this done by the end of December, because I know for a fact that my energy is going to tip to a different focus, and it's going to take me a lot longer to get to the goal that I can get done if I can just finish this in December. So it's really kind of tracking these things so you can really kind of figure out like what is working for me and what's not working for me, and thinking from an emotional standpoint too of like, okay, am I actually feeling good about getting up at 5 a.m. or am I dragging myself out of bed and I'm kind of like cranky and miserable that I've decided to do this to myself? Because then that might be an indicator of like, okay, maybe you should be working at 11 p.m. because there's plenty of authors that are working late in the night. So, it doesn't have to be like you were saying before. It doesn't have to be this like this pinnacle of like, you were only an author if you work on this during this window of time. Like that just doesn't make sense for people.
Yeah. I think what a lot of things that you just pointed to goes back to something else that you said, which was self-awareness, right? It's being aware of when your energy peaks and dips. It's being aware of like what the realistic pockets in your schedule look like. It's being aware of, is this a time of year where you're busier because the weather has shifted, or you've got school-aged children still that you're still kind of functioning along their schedule? Are you caring for an elderly parent at this point? And what does that mean for your energetic capacity and your schedule and, what you're trying to do in life? So, it's not a one size fits all. It's not, well, I'm writing a book and now everything else gets put on hold. That would be lovely, and actually that is an option. So this is a really good anecdote. And this is from a client that I'm working with currently. She had a kind of a tight deadline for that first draft, and she was kind of going right along, and a lot of stamina, a lot of momentum, a lot of consistency. And then she got to like the last 5 chapters in the manuscript, she stalled out. Energy and momentum just completely dipped and slowed down. Part of it had to do with getting sick. Part of it had to do with the Thanksgiving holiday and family coming in from out of town. Part of it had to do with launching something in her business, right? Real life things, interruptions, took her out of her game. When she knew she needed to get back to it, it was like those last 5 chapters were like that last leg of the marathon where you're like, I just want to quit. Yeah. I'm tired. I'm hungry. My muscles hurt. I've got blisters, right? Like, I don't want to do it. You're so close and yet you feel so far at the same time.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, we need a final like push, like, because you can't just stall out. You got to finish this thing or you're never going to be able to get to revising.
Yeah.
So what that looked like for her was looking at her calendar, finding a day that she already had off, and using that one day to take herself out of her normal environment where she would usually write and away from the distractions of that normal environment, right? In this case, it would have been her home. And so she would have seen either the dishes or the laundry or, other work that she could have been doing that was like sitting there, facing her, and going and like basically holding up somewhere else. She chose to go and get herself an Airbnb for the night and the day. And to just push through those last 5 chapters, make it the only thing that she was doing that day, the only thing that she was worried about. But for her, it required getting out of the normal environment and the normal routine that she had already established because it was no longer working.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is the awareness to have of like, wow, this isn't working, knowing why it's not working. I actually have a progress tracker. So, and if anybody wants it, you're welcome to just email me because I don't think it's easily available on our website. But it basically has like columns that are like what time of day it is, where you are, what you're kind of what you're working on. So that way you can actually see very clearly, okay, like, because I noticed that pattern for myself that I am so prolifically writing when I'm flying. Like it just comes out. I don't even have to think. Like it's just like boiling and waiting to come out. And I know that I can just save up a lot of writing for the next time I'm going to be on a plane. But there are other people that be the exact opposite experience. Or So you can say like, am I on public transportation? Am I, on a vacation? Like what are those patterns? Because then you can look at it and be like, oh wow, I guess I didn't realize that every time, and it has a word count total. That's the key to it. So every time you sit down to write, you can see, oh wow, interesting. When I'm sitting out on my deck for whatever reason, it looks like I produce a lot more content. And it's not to say that it's an exact science, but at least it gives you a place to start if self-awareness is not really a strength, because it is a skill that has to be developed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's tracking data, right? It's data points, it's clues or direction, right? Where you can find patterns and trends and then hopefully develop a plan from there, Same client, but earlier on in the draft, it was a particular chapter that was really, she was really struggling with. It had to do with some of the emotional content and going back to a place that was uncomfortable, right? And having to read and rewrite. So in that instance, we set up a writing ritual reward kind of thing, which was, just to kind of create an atmosphere or environment for safe writing, whether that was lighting incense or a candle or having like an affirmation or mantra to say out loud before doing the hard writing, and then doing the writing. And then on the other side of the writing, rewarding oneself for having sat down and gotten through it. Something grounding, like going outside for a brief walk or putting your feet in the grass or just a big glass of water or hot tea. Something that's self-soothing, right? But also is like, oh, okay, I got through that. Like now I get to take a deep breath and I get to like check in with myself and I get to just be in that celebration of like, I did it. I'm back to this present moment. I'm good. And we paired that with Hertz frequencies. So you can get these on Spotify. It's kind of, it's tonal, but there's something that's super deeply resonating and soothing with your vibration, like your internal vibration. And it's not like, the words to the song because there are no words. So you're not there jamming along, right? This is like white noise. But there's also this like brain thing that, the Hertz frequencies will do while you're working. And so it can kind of put you into a meditative and focused state. So playing some of those, it's just finding what works. And in this instant, that kind of 3-step process that we created for her helped her get through that one particular chapter.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But notice that there's a piece to all of these things that we've suggested that we haven't explicitly stated, which is an outside force supporting you. So in one instance, it could be the tracker. Right. It's actually plugging in information into something that will contain that information for you to then go back and look at. In other instances, it's a coach or a professional who's helping you come up with strategies to be successful and to keep going.
Yeah. And even, a lot of times I don't advise having a spouse or partner or family member be kind of that accountability point, but sometimes it does work. I think, not every author is fortunate enough to have a supportive system around them, unfortunately. So, if you do, that's a fantastic thing too, to be like, hey, can you just like, just ask me every now and then, like how things are going? Because even that alone, because I think there's something about us that doesn't want to feel like we're disappointing somebody else, even though it's like completely our own thing. But like, if you ask me, like, did you do that thing? Like, then I might be disappointed that I didn't do it. And I don't want to disappoint you. I'll disappoint myself all day long, but I don't want to disappoint you as the person holding me accountable. So there's kind of an element there too. And that is also dependent on your level of awareness of, is that how you operate? Are you, so will accountability in that sense work for you because it's how you kind of already function?
I think another piece of this like sustaining part, and I thought of it as you were talking about accountability and people in your life, if they're supportive or not supportive, I think there's a big piece in here to this equation, which is permission. Permission to choose out of things to create more space in your schedule for writing.
Yes.
Permission to not do the dishes tonight. And use those 15 minutes or whatever to put a few words down. Permission to maybe tag a partner or family member to go bring your child to or from that practice. So you have a few extra minutes during that practice to like write a few more words. I mean, these are temporary sacrifices. You're not going to be writing your book forever. But you're never going to get it done if you don't choose into it. And not all of us have a flexible schedule to be able to fit it in between meetings or on a lunch break or, whatever. There's a lot of writers who are not business owners and entrepreneurs who can create whatever schedule they want. They're high-powered executives, they're leaders within their companies, and they're trying to do this outside of that 9 to 5. Well, something's got to give, right? And it shouldn't be your sleep, because that's not going to help you with your energy. So it's really understanding, like, when you choose yes into something, you're choosing no for something else, right? And where does the book fit into the yes or the no buckets? Obviously having a supportive partner or whatever is helpful, right? But if it's like they don't want to share their time with you, then okay, what else could it mean then? Would they be more willing to do the laundry or the dishes so that it's not eating into the quality time that the two of you have, but the chores are still getting done and you're still getting the book written, right? Can it be that, like, Saturday or Sunday mornings are more yours, right? And the other morning can be reserved still for partner time, like if that's what it's coming down to. So I think that you have to be open and conversational about the importance of the book. You have to set some boundaries and limitations for yourself and for the people around you, but you also have to give yourself permission to do that.
Yeah. And what I think you're bringing into is planning. Like, there's planning for the unexpected, which is hard because it's unexpected, and that's kind of why it's hard to plan for. But then there's planning for the expected things that you already know. So one of the things that I talk about a lot and write about in my book is using, like, if this, then that statements. So, like, if this happens, then I'm going to do this. So a lot of times I find that most of the time it falls into two buckets. It's, if my family interrupts me, if my spouse is not being supportive, if my job schedule is not flexible this week, then I am going to, and then you can say, get up earlier on Saturday to work on it, or I'm going to skip that particular week and I'm not going to beat myself up about it. Or so that way you kind of know in advance. So there's kind of like the logistical side of challenges that I find that people need these kind of mapped out for. And then there's the emotional side of the challenges. So if I'm being triggered by this particular story that Ally is encouraging me to go deeper on, then I'm going to insert here. I'm going to schedule a debrief call with Ally to kind of talk through, like, what it is that's triggering me. And maybe that's something relevant to my work. Or I'm going to schedule time with my therapist, or I'm going to go have a day out with my girlfriends. Like, so that way we have the logistics and we have the emotions. And that way, when you're sitting there and writing and you're like, son of a bitch, my kid is not in bed like he's supposed to be, you can say, okay, I already planned for this. If my kid got out of bed like he should not be getting out of bed, then I am going to go sit out in my car and work while he's watching TV. You know what I mean? Like, it's different for everybody, but like, then then you're not in the moment where you're filled with rage and then you're beating yourself up because you're like, I just want to get this damn thing done, but you feel like you can't get it done because there's all these distractions. You have them all kind of planned for. And then when there's something truly unexpected, you still can kind of pull from that arsenal of your other plans, and it doesn't feel as catastrophic or derailing as it might feel otherwise.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. I like that if then statements. It's like creating a rule in tech, right? Exactly. Like, that's what you're doing. You're planning for scenarios so that the system knows where to go next based on how you've charted it, right?
Yep.
All right. What about this often happens too. So we've talked a lot. I mean, we've kind of gone off script.
Shocker.
It happens. We started talking about kind of like first drafts and like just like that push to get all of the words done. What have you seen, Jen, with authors who are in the revising stage? Because I find that there can be a lot of stalling out in the revising stage because of the overwhelm of now having to go back into the material and potentially rework major like portions. And this is where people want to quit, give up, burn it down.
Oh, I have been there myself. I had to change I think it was my 4th book, I had to change the ending of chapter 2. And I sat on that change for like 6 weeks because I was just so overwhelmed by the thought of it. And then when I actually sat down to do it, I'm not even kidding, it took me like 30 minutes because it really wasn't as monumental as it felt at the time. I think what I usually recommend is going through the document once without the goal of trying to correct anything and just look at what the ghostwriter, developmental editor, whomever it is who provided the feedback, go through it once and just see, okay, what is the totality of the chaos that I am getting myself into?
Mm-hmm.
Then you can look at that and say, all right, there are 15 significant rewrites that I have to do. And then what you can do is plan time as individual clumps of time to say, okay, I'm just going to focus on one rewrite today. And it doesn't have to be linear. I think this is the thing that I wish more authors really thought through is that you don't have to write linear and you don't have to edit linear. You don't have to rewrite linear. You can just go where you're feeling inspired in that moment to go do that rewrite. Because instead of looking at this 200-page document and thinking, how on earth am I going to get through all of these edits? It's way easier to wrap your head around and say, okay, there's 15 big edits. All right, I'm just going to plan 15 different days to do this. And then once you're in the flow of it, it might go a lot faster than you think. And you can do 2 edits in one sitting, or you can do like all of them in one sitting sometimes, depending on like, you know, how much time you've allotted. But it breaks it down into such a more manageable process that your success rates are going to be a lot higher and your emotions aren't going to be as, I think, frazzled.
Yeah. Yeah. I often will say, like, look at all of my comments first.
Mm-hmm.
Do nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Digest them. Make sure you understand what I'm saying so that you have clarity in what needs to be fixed. And then usually, unless the small stuff is going to get eaten up by changes from the larger level, I will actually tell them to fix the small stuff first.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you fix the small stuff first, you're clearing out minor changes that are cluttering the margins and making it seem unsurmountable, right? If I'm suggesting, like, you know, this paragraph's 3 sentences should be moved around and I've showed you like what order they should go in, just do it. It's going to take no time at all. You have clear direction. It's already marked. You have a step-by-step process. Do it, clear off the comment, and now you've got one less comment, right? So I feel like if you're working with an editor to that level, where like a lot of these things are being tracked in the comments and some of them are even being changed for you, review it, make sure you agree with it, but like make the small change, clear it up, get it out of the way. Then you start to see a cleaner manuscript. You start to get rid of all the small dead weight, right? And that leaves you with the bigger things to then go, okay, 150 small, tiny changes have just been completed. Now I'm left with the 5 really big ones. And now I can actually see what I'm supposed to do with the 5 big ones because all the small stuff is done.
Yeah. And you feel momentum. You're like, oh, I got this. Like you're feeling like confident.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to bigger, more significant reconstruction, so it's not a matter of like on the chapter level, there's a bunch of little things and a couple of paragraphs need to be rewritten, or you know, a page needs to get removed around. Let's say it's like you've got 2 books in one draft. We've got to cut half of this out and then we've got to rearrange the rest.
Yes.
Okay.
I have no idea what that's like.
Take a deep breath and maybe a day off.
And don't hate your editor for it.
Okay. Take a deep breath, take the day off, and just settle into the fact that this is an iterative process, that this is not abnormal, that you didn't fail, that you didn't do your job wrong. This is just sometimes the nature of like when we have thousands of hours of thought into something and we attempt to write it all down. Our wires can get crossed. Our content can get bloated. We can end up with too many ideas shoved into one manuscript. Now, you will prevent a lot of that if you do some of the things that we suggest in our other episodes, such as outlining and getting clear. But it's okay. Lots of people don't start that way. They think, I know what I'm talking about. I've been doing this for 25 years. I'm just going to sit down and onto the page. Yeah. That is what ends up creating the like messy monster that might need to be completely reconstructed. But You're not alone in having done it that way. But it's also completely normal to get to the end of a draft and have major revision, which is a whole other energetic lift, right? But it's not impossible. And you won't regret having spent the time carving out half of it and rearranging the other half to get it to be the book that it's meant to be, not the book that you started with. But how do you go about that? So breathing and taking the day off, right? Getting your head game back on. If you just go right back to it the next day, but you haven't accepted that like this is normal, that this is a part of the process, that this is going to be better, you are just going to, the whole time that you're trying to revise. And I promise you that if you got that energy going into it, it's going to feel painful.
Absolutely. Okay. And the reader would pick up on that if it went out the door as is. It's
going to feel painful. Bite it off into chunks, right? You're not going to be able to handle major reconstruction all in one sitting. So you really need to look at the feedback that you've received, right? And say, what can I tackle first? And if you don't know what you should tackle first, like you don't understand what would be the clearest process, to go through to have the smoothest reconstruction, that you need to ask your editor, the person who gave you that feedback. What would you tackle first, given what I'm up against? And then set a path and a deadline just for that one first step. And don't worry about the rest just yet. A lot of the times with major reconstruction like that, when you can fix one very big thing, it often has a nice cascading domino effect of either fixing a lot of other things or pointing exactly what you need to do next, right? Because once you do that major fix, you're like, oh, I see now, like, what else needs to happen in order to support this like first thing that I just did to get the manuscript where I need it to go. Here's what you can't do. You can't quit altogether.
No.
All right.
Too much in it already.
You can't quit altogether. You've got too much energy invested, too much time, too much passion, right? And the manuscript's not going to revise itself. So you're never going to get to the end if you just flat out quit and say that it sucks. Almost every author has hated their book at some point along the journey.
And for a good chunk of time sometimes.
Either because one chapter was just really persnickety and you just don't know what to do with it and you just want to like strangle it, right? Or you go through that major reconstruction and you're like, why will this just not come out cleanly, right? We all go through the like love-hate thing at some point during this process, but you can't give up on it.
No.
Like resilience, my friends, resilience. It's going to be necessary.
Yeah. Chapter 8 of my new book coming out in the spring was that for me, where I was like, I'm just going to throw my laptop. I'm going to flip my desk over. I'm just going to go outside and scream because I could not figure out how to include everything that needed to be included in a way that was a good flow for the reader. And it was making me insane. The rest of it relatively still had lots of stuff to fix, but like that was really like the chapter that I was like, I don't know what to do with this. And I think that when we think about the totality of all of it, and we're thinking about, wow, I want to give up. I don't want to do this. We have to remember that we are still the expert on our topic, right? Like the problem is that we put too much in. So it's not like when you get in there to do that big reconstruction, it's really, you're still using your own brain power, your all of your own stuff. You're just kind of thinking about how to share it in a way that feels more kind of clear and concise. And I will say that I have this happen all the time where someone is coming to us and they have 2 books in one. Like it is so the norm. Like it's really not that big of a deal. And I know from an author standpoint, especially a first-time author, it might feel catastrophic because you're getting this feedback of like, wow, you actually have 2 books here. And then once they kind of get through it, they're like, oh, wow, I have 2 books here. And then they're like, you can hear like the little bit of excitement coming of like, oh, that means I can do something else with this other work. So it's thinking about not just throwing away that other work. Like we're not just saying it's 2 books. You have to just selectively choose just what you want to use. You can use all of that other stuff in podcast, in Substacks, in LinkedIn articles, interviews. You can use all of that content in other ways. And sometimes what I tell people is when you're going through it, have some kind of like lens to look at it through. So if you're like, okay, I don't even know where to begin. with pulling apart what actually stays in this book and what goes in another book, have some questions for yourself. You know, like, is this book about strategy or is it about tactics? Okay, is this section strategy or tactic? It's strategy, it goes in this book. If it's tactic, it goes into this book. That's really probably not a good example, but you know, really just kind of having that, is this a blank? If yes, here, if no, there. Just having a couple of those will really help kind of clarify the vision. And then you'll have two different Word documents that are both absolute disasters and chaotic, but at least you'll have all of the pieces that belong in the one document you're trying to work with. And then you can start to rearrange, because now you can look at it cleanly to say, okay, now I see where I'm trying to go with this. Let me figure out how to fix it, because now you have the clarity of actually all of this other stuff, while great and helpful and useful, doesn't really belong here anymore.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, what you're talking about is sometimes you need to slow down to go fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think with major reconstructions, if you didn't already ask yourself these questions, now is the time to ask. Mm-hmm. If you already asked yourself these questions before you got started, now is the time to reevaluate. And that is mission, motivation, and message. Mm-hmm. What was the motivation of me writing this book again? Like, why was I doing this? What was in it for me? And then, okay, that's motivation. What was my mission? So what was I hoping I was going to give to the reader? What was the promise? What was the transformation? What was the thing that I wanted them to learn from here? And then what was the message? What was the main thing that I was intending to say? Yeah. Right? That is your filtration system. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking at this manuscript and you're going, okay, I'm getting told that I've got 2 books here. Mm-hmm. This is the one that I intended to write, right? Motivation, mission, and message. What are the pieces that actually belong with that? And maybe all these others are some other mission, motivation, and message that I have yet to actually clarify, but seem to be hints of in here with all this excess material. Yeah. Chances are, if your editor is suggesting that you've got 2 books in one, they can already see the divide, mm-hmm. right? But if you don't understand it, then you should be asking yourself those questions, right? To help you get on board with seeing how it's 2 separate books, and then being really excited that you drafted 2 books at one time. 2 birds, 1 stone, my friend, you mm-hmm. know, and for me, I hate drafting. So if I had that problem, I'd be thrilled. Because now when it gets to the next book, I don't have to sit with that messy first draft. That mm-hmm. shit's already done. Now mm-hmm. I just get to be in revising stage of like putting it in the right order, cleaning it up, and getting it where it needs to go next. Mm-hmm. But I often find that there are like 2 camps of people, the people who like drafting and the people who like revising, and they're often not people who like both. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. It's just 2 different ways you're engaging your brain, right? Yeah. Like it's 2 different muscles that are being, and you know, we like some, we don't like others. I want to ask then to you, so we've talked about kind of like big reconstruction. We kind of talked about like what would fall under developmental edits. What about copy editing? Like what's your advice for someone who, in terms of like, again, from an energy standpoint, now you have, because developmental editing, there's a lot of track changes in there, but there are not even close to as many as when you were in the copy editing phase. Like that can be egregiously overwhelming. Like I had 1,429 track changes in my last one. And that's book number 8. So I still have that many problems. And I've done this 8 times before and coached hundreds of others. So, you know, like, let's all just like recognize that we're all human. But like, what is your, you know, like, what's your advice to an author who's like really just struggling from an energetic standpoint and they're in the copy editing phase? Yeah. So, I mean, it echoes a lot of some of the things that we've already talked about, but number 1, usually that copy edit, line edit, mechanical edit, whatever sentence level edit mm-hmm. that has been performed, usually you're going to get a style sheet back, which basically identifies a list of things that the editor has chosen to correct consistently. So they're going to let you know how they decided to do certain capitalizations, perhaps, you know, where they're going to use the Oxford comma, if they've decided on dashes somewhere along the way to be used on a consistent basis. I'm getting background feedback. I'm not sure why I started. Can you hear me? I can hear you. Do you want to like both just mute and unmute ourselves, see if that changes? Yeah. Okay. Hold on. All right. Weird. Is that better? No, I can still hear it. Oh, weird. I don't hear it. I don't know. Well, I'll keep going. Go being live. I can hear you. Okay. So review the style sheet so that you have an understanding of what rules now apply to your manuscript, so that as you're reviewing their changes, you understand why they've changed certain things the way that they have, right? Because if you don't look at it and you go right in there to their changes and you're not understanding why they did something a certain way, you might be apt to reject something that has been intentionally corrected and there's been reason for it given that style sheet. So you always want to look at the style sheet first, understand, digest that material, ask clarifying questions before you begin to review the actual edits themselves, so that as you're coming across those items that the style sheet already referenced, there's not a conflict and it's easier for you to like check them off. So do that first and do that in one sitting, and that's it. Just look at the style sheet. Don't even open the other document just yet. Just make sure you're good on what the style sheet says. Once you go into the manuscript, just review all of the things, scan it. You don't need to sit there and like make sure that you get it, but just get a feel for, oh, I'm noticing there's a lot of double spaces. I'm noticing that there's a lot of like missing commas. I'm noticing that like I've got my pluralization all messed up. And so there's all these corrections to apostrophes, right? When you have a sense that like the stuff that you're looking at is just like small crap, you know, it takes this kind of like 1,400 comments. Like it takes that out of the equation, because instead of looking at the number going, oh my God, there's so many mistakes, it's more like, oh,
not a big deal.
This isn't not a big deal. These are some commas and some apostrophes. These are fast. These are easy. And if the copy editor and line editor has already tracked everything, okay, they've already tracked everything. It shows you exactly what needs to be fixed. It's got the nifty little box with a check mark. Then you're kind of literally just sitting there and like doing a quick review of what the change is and then hitting the check mark, which resolves the issue. It can take a while if you're being tedious and diligent with reviewing and making sure you agree with all of the changes. So in that way, I would say take it chapter by chapter, right? If you have 14 chapters, take a chapter a day, get it done in 2 weeks, right? Very easy, especially when it's just that minor stuff that like more or less you're just checking off. Occasionally at that level, you will find that a copy editor, line editor, whoever they are, will find something that maybe somebody else didn't. Like, well, when you said this, did you mean this or did you mean that? Right. And so it might take a little bit more than just checking off whatever they're suggesting. You might need to rewrite the sentence. You might need to think a little bit about what were you trying to say? Maybe there's a word choice that's a problem. Maybe you need to read the sentence out loud to hear what could be wrong with it. So again, if you're just doing it chapter each day, when those things that require just a little extra lift besides just checking off the box, you'll have the stamina and energy for it, because there's probably only going to be a handful of things in that one chapter that require that level. Whereas like sitting there and doing it for all 14 in one sitting is going to feel fatiguing, especially because at this point in the journey, you've looked at it 1,000 times, right? And you can't see it anymore. So by doing it chapter by chapter, you're also allowing your brain to have that rest in between, to focus just on one chapter at a time, to allow some space for sending back some questions of clarification if you need to the editor on the chapter that you're working on. The only caveat to do a chapter a day is if your publisher that you're working with is requiring you to turn it around much faster, right? And then you'll probably need a different scheme. But if you can do a chapter a day, I would say you're doing pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, there's another strategy here, is if we think about, like, I love your tip about the style sheet, like looking at the style sheet first. I think that makes like such a good idea that I hadn't really thought of, because I just think of the style sheet as like it just travels with a document. That way everyone's on the same page. But when we think about consistency, right, there are plenty of things in the style sheet that like most books are like Chicago Manual of Style. That does not mean you as an author are writing in Chicago Manual of Style. Like that, like you don't even know what that means most likely. And that's okay. You're not meant to know what it means. Like it doesn't matter if you know what it means or don't, because the industry is kind of operating. Again, there's other style guides, but I feel like a lot of times it's Chicago, and that's what we use. We have our house style guide on top of that, where we have specific deviations that we make to Chicago for whatever purpose we have decided in the past. And then you have your style sheet that's kind of like deviating on top of the house, on top of Chicago. But you might disagree with it. So you might look at that style sheet and say, you know what, I really do prefer, I don't even know, we'll say M dashes. I really do prefer M dashes versus commas, or sprinkling them in more, whatever rhyme or reason someone might have. And it's okay as long as it's consistent. I think that is the key that every editor and everyone is trying to make sure is that we're consistent. Or I think contractions is probably a really good example because that seems to be where I cause pure chaos for every editor that has ever worked on every book of mine. Is like the last 3 books of mine have been the same editor, and she's like, I just need, like, we're using contractions because in my case, like, I want it to sound conversational. I want it to feel accessible. And so having contractions makes it feel more so makes it feel a little less formal. But if I'm writing one chapter feeling formal and the next one feeling more casual, it's creating a disconnect. So when we're thinking about those changes, because your editor might say, I really think this should be in, you shouldn't use contractions at all. You might disagree with that, and that's perfectly fine. You just need to make sure you're consistently doing that from start to finish. So I feel like I just wanted to kind of like say that piece because it really is all about consistency. Like I will die on the hill about using the use of an Oxford comma, but if an author does not like them, does not believe in them, I don't care as long as it's consistent, right? Like that is really the ultimate. And that's us as a publisher. There are plenty of publishers who might also die on that hill, and that's their prerogative. And then the other thing I want to say is about the accepting of changes.
Mm-hmm.
One strategy to do, I like your idea of kind of breaking down by chapter. It can be a very long and arduous process to go through change by change. I like to put my faith in the editor that I have hired to work with me on getting it done and know that they are not doing anything that is going to go against what I'm trying to accomplish. So what I like to do is have the marked up document and then a document where it's already all accepted. And I like to just kind of bounce back and forth and check because of all those things that you were saying where like sometimes they'll catch something and they'll put a comment in there that's like, hey, you might want to do this. So I can go through those 1,429 changes and 1,300 of them could be the inappropriate use of a comma. And now it's all gone out to work because I don't care where the comma goes. Like that is not my job as the author necessarily to know exactly the perfect use of a comma when we have editors and copy editors and proofreaders who kind of help that. It is helpful, obviously, as an author to know where to use them and where not to use them, but we don't have to be the expert on that. So you can accept all in the document and just spot check, kind of like just read through and make sure everything feels good. And if there was a place where the editor really thought that something had to kind of be reworked, it's going to be obvious. And it's going to be obvious in the track change version, and it's going to be obvious in the document. And then you can veto, because that's the other thing too, is that, as an author, you do have veto power over suggestions.
Right.
We like to use them sparingly, but if you completely disagree with something, like you're the author, like you are okay to disagree with whatever that thing is. Just be consistent is what I tell people every single day of the week.
Yeah. Actually, that brings up a really good thing too. When you're vetting your copy editor, mechanical editor, line editor, whatever, if you're not going through a publisher, but you're finding that person yourself, ask them, will they send you back a version that's already all changes accepted, so that you can do that side by side and avoid being the one to sit there and check every single box off. Yeah. All right. We have 6 minutes left till the top of the hour. So let's segue here into just giving you all a little sneak peek into what season 3 of Unscripted with Ally and Jenn is going to be all about. So number 1, the things that I'm excited about, because this is who I am, we're rebranding, my friends.
Yes.
New colors, new fonts, new show art, new StreamYard backgrounds, and maybe even a little intro, outro ditty for you when we do these live shows. So I'm really pumped about that. We also just bought a domain.
Sure did.
Right before we got on here. So Jenn, what's the reveal?
It is unscriptedforauthors.com will be a location where people can go and find what our upcoming topics are. They can see past topics. They will be able to hopefully at some point be able to be notified when that is happening. So that way it is not just a surprise. Oh, hey, it's December. We're talking about this in January, because we have an entire content arc that is using you, my friend, as a case study from a marketing standpoint for all 2026.
So y'all, season 3, 2026 is going to be our promotion season. So Jenn has mentioned 1,000 times in the last however many months, if you all have not been listening, that she has her next book coming out, Promote Your Purpose. You can see that beautiful little book over her right shoulder. And so what we're going to be doing is we're basically going to be walking you through Jenn's Promote Your Purpose book, but using me as the author case study in kind of taking action and implementing some of the suggestions that are in that book in real time. But you can play along too. So if you are in the process of writing a book, and you know that marketing is important, that you should be building that engine alongside the development of the manuscript, you do not want to miss next season's episodes. If you are an author who already has a book, who thinks that maybe they did the marketing wrong or didn't market at all, this is also a really great season for you, because this is a chance for you to reevaluate your marketing strategy alongside the book that's already published. All right. So we are working in the next couple of weeks to get unscriptedforauthors.com up and running so that you can see what 2026 holds, when those episodes are going to air. And you will also have the option of opting in for a workbook that's going to complement the season and the book. You do not need the workbook in order to just join us live and listen to the episodes and follow along. You also don't need a copy of Jen's book in order to use the workbook if you want to opt in for that. So this is like a choose your own adventure season, but it's all about promotion, and we want you along for the ride.
Yeah. And I'm excited because it just organically works out that there's 12 chapters. So it kind of gives us a perfect runway here. And it does start off by really thinking about the intentionality behind what you're doing, the who you're trying to reach, thinking about how to kind of reframe our mindset, thinking about sales as a service versus like, ew, I feel gross, I have to sell this book now. So it really kind of brings us through the whole journey. It doesn't just kind of like plop you in January being like, all right, go start doing Facebook ads. Like that is absolutely not. This is all about a sustainable plan that will last in the long run, that helps bring visibility to you and your work. And so we will have a very clear and gradual build to through the end of the year. And if you miss an episode, that's why we're going to have it on the website. So that way it's easy to kind of go back to be like, oh, I'm intrigued because in July they're talking about sales as a service. And I know that I'm really bad at sales. I want to check that out. But then you might be like, oh, well, now I want to know what they said in the first 6 months, and it'll all be kind of there and available. So yeah, I'm excited because I've never had an opportunity to do like a case study in real time. And it's perfect because you're going to be using both of your books, both your memoir and Do Not Write a Book until you read this one. So like, I think that's going to be awesome. So if you're a nonfiction author or a memoir author, you are welcome for the conversation, either direction, simply because we will have 2 case studies side by side.
Yeah, I'm excited. And remember, folks, you don't have to show up live to the episodes. Although we are encouraging it, because one of the things that we're building into next season is a few minutes for some live coaching with anybody who shows up during the live hour that we are airing. The live show that we're broadcasting, airing. I don't know. Something feels weird about that phrasing. But if you show up while we are live, then there is a chance for you to ask questions in real time and get coaching in real time on what you are working on. It's a perfect opportunity for you to get expert advice for free, so that you can be doing this alongside us in the best, most effective way possible.
Yeah, I'm excited. And like you said before, it's choose your own venture. So this is not a promo for my book the entire way through. You don't have to buy the book. You get the workbook for free. You don't want to use the workbook. It does not matter. Like we want to make this accessible. And just by our conversation alone will be where the tactics and the tips all live. Just like we have for every other episode that we've done. We're always trying to kind of give as much guidance as we can, so people don't have to necessarily have to come hire us to do the work. Although that's great when it happens. That's not our motivation for why we do this.
That's right. So stay tuned. If you're interested in being notified when unscriptedforauthors.com actually has content available, a chance for you to sign up for that workbook, then please put in the comments that you would like one of us to reach out to you once that webpage is set up. We are happy to do that. It'll be a couple of weeks, but we are right on the cusp of getting everything kind of laid out for next year and up and running. We're really excited. And I think, Jen, we already have our first date for 2026. So January 8th?
I think so. I almost said the wrong date, so I'm glad that you said that. Yes, yes, January 8th at 10 a.m. Eastern time.
10 a.m. Eastern. So, my friends, we're going to see you then. And in the meantime, we're wishing you happy holidays and a happy new year.
Likewise. See you all in the new year.